What's going on, everyone? I'm just your typical, atypical, average, not average Canadian nerd here to react to your average, typical American man, here to react to and learn from a video about the remarkable Canadian economy, which, of course, this original was filmed 9 months ago. And in the last 9 months, much has changed in the economy. Well, like the global economy. But hey, I'm no financial expert and I'm not a doctor. So this video he's reacting to is possibly not accurate. I will possibly be not accurate, but I am a Canadian. And so I like to give my thoughts, my perspective, my word. How about this question for you? Do you think it's better that I just keep playing the video when I have little Canadianisms to say, like, oh yeah, and tell me about it, and you betcha? Or do you think it's better that I pause the video every time I have something to say, like, oh yeah, that's right? And let me know in the comments down below, because someone let me know that they couldn't stand to watch me anymore because apparently my reaction to the reaction was getting in the way of the reaction or something similar. Anyway, let's stop that thought, stop this picture, start this video.
I'm just a typical, average American here today to react and learn about the Canadian economy. Now, Americans they don't know the first thing about the Canadian economy.
Figures.
We don't really think about any other economies but our own. You know, that's just like the American way. No offense to Canada. I'd call it the same way for any other nation in the world. Americans really only seem to be taught and bother to learn about things that directly affect themselves.
And to be fair, obligatory pause. How much do we, as the average Canadian, know about, say, the Ugandan economy, for example? Yeah, so it's pretty fair that they don't know much about ours either.
And, you know, I'm sure for many different countries around the world, that is a similar school of thought. But at the same time, we've become such a globalized world, all so connected. Plus, Canada is our neighbor, for crying out loud. We need to know about the Canadian economy. We affect each other in that way. So I think it's actually quite important. And so I'm very excited to learn and according to this title, dig deep into the Canadian economy. I don't exactly know what they're going to talk about. Maybe about the imports and exports of the Canadian economy.
The lumber, of course, they're gonna bring up maple syrup, right?
You know, things that Canada relies on for money, the average wealth of Canadians, that sort of thing, financial status of the country and people. I don't know, but I'm quite interested. There's actually a lot of different ways you could break down an economy.
And Canada being very big, of course, we have different economies throughout the country. Alberta, for example, heavy in the oil and gas, whereas Ontario, heavy in the lumber and the cow pies. Oh yeah, that's an Ottawa reference right there. BS, you know what I mean? The politics.
But I don't know the first thing about the Canadian economy, so I'm ready to learn. So let's take a look.
Known for merciless winters, Moraine Lake, maple syrup, polite people, and not so polite hockey players.
Of course they start this out with all the things that Americans think about when they think of Canada. Maple syrup, winter, hockey players fighting each other. Yeah, I mean, that about covers it.
Yeah, we gotta set the context before getting into anything, right?
Is a G7 member and the 9th biggest economy in the world by GDP.
See, that's the kind of thing that's the kind of thing I don't know about. That Canada is the 9th biggest economy on the planet. That's kind of substantial.
If you are a Canadian watching this video, don't forget to say sorry in the comment section, eh?
Okay.
Canada is a Commonwealth country based on the principle of peace, order, and good government.
Peace, order, and good government. I like that. I like that. That's a good little rule to live by, right?
Some say it's slightly inclined towards the need for the common good while accepting moderate limits on individual freedom. But
One quick note here. At the time of this video that was originally recorded, it was ninth. At the moment of my recording, Canada is the 10th largest global economy. Sorry to interrupt.
Canada is not a socialist country. It is a capitalistic economy based on the accumulation of capital, production of wealth based on the wage-labor relationship between the owners and workers, and the means of production through mostly privately owned companies generating profits for their owners.
Okay, wow. Suddenly we just dived right into it.
Basically, it's not that different from America.
We were going slow there, like, oh, maple syrup. And then suddenly we're talking about capitalism and the effects on, like, the individuals. Anyway, it's funny they phrase it like this, because when Americans are starting to not like America, and they're like, oh, I hate it here, I hate the policies, they are always saying, I'm going to move to Canada. That place is great. Because it's got some socialist policies, but where we're worried about the good of like society as a whole, and making sure no one's left like out in the cold on the lowest tier of starvation and financial need, and that really appeals to a lot of people in America. But Canada clearly has a large capitalistic side to it with business, small businesses. And a free market, which appeals to a lot of Americans as well. So I actually think this sounds like a fantastic, healthy balance of all the policies.
Yeah, and it's the American ideal that they want the same life they have in America. They're just fed up with this or they're fed up with that, so they're going to move to Canada where they don't have to deal with this or that because, well, we have a slightly different system. Yeah.
Yes, the country does have a developed social security net, but many people fail to understand that having welfare programs does not make a country socialist. You can call it a mixed market economy, but that mixture consists of capitalism and minimum state regulation instead of a mixture of capitalism and socialism.
Huh. I mean, yeah, even America has some welfare programs for helping out financially troubled, people who have the most trouble financially in America, which at the lowest tiers, people are living paycheck to paycheck, trying to survive in America, where the very, very richest have an outrageous amount of the wealth, more than they could ever spend. So it's tough justifying the existence of both of those. So I'm curious if Canada kind of thinks about that as well. It sounds like it a bit.
Yeah, we're practically the same in many different ways.
Canada, just like many developed nations, followed a sequence of transitioning from a raw material-based economy to a manufacturing-based economy, and finally transitioning again to a service-based economy.
Raw material to manufacturing to service. That makes sense. So at the beginning it was like if you're selling whatever.
Lumber, fur, or minerals, or being a term that refers to minerals if you're not aware of that. Yeah, no judgment, just a funny little thing in my head, that's all.
Rocks or oil or gold or just very raw material. Then manufacturing, when that came along.
So that's taking the raw materials and then putting them together to make something.
We're literally getting into history here, manufacturing getting more advanced. And now it's like a service economy, which I think most people would... America's definitely a manufacturing and service economy.
Well, the manufacturing is tilted backwards a lot in the past few decades, especially with offshoring businesses.
Where people buy and sell services, and that's like a huge amount of the economy. Same in Canada, makes sense.
In an earlier video, we discussed that most service-based economies happen to somehow have their service sector around 70% of the total GDP. This pattern is true for the Canadian economy as well.
Wow, I actually don't know the proportions of the United States proportionally like that. How much is the economy is services and manufacturing? I actually don't know.
And that's okay because what we don't know just shows what we haven't been exposed to. And that's perfectly fine. Something can't judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree or a monkey by its ability to swim underwater, right?
Ranked among the top 10 countries on the Economic Freedom Index, the Canadian economy has some resemblance with the Australian economy. Australia has magpie attacks and Canada has geese. Sorry, let's get back to the economic-only similarities.
Okay.
Both economies are wealthy and industrialized.
Oh, see, there's an issue here. Australia isn't upside down.
Both have housing bubbles. Both are highly exposed to international trade and commodity prices. Both are disproportionately reliant on one trading partner. In Australia's case, it's China, and in Canada's case, it's the United States.
Oh, okay. Wow. This is exactly proving my point from earlier. Like, this is why Americans need to know this stuff. That I don't know what America considers its most important trading partner, because I kind of figured it was a combination of a lot of different nations. And I'm sure one is technically the most important, but
Yes.
I'm thinking it's a lot of nations that we do trade with that cumulatively forms our economy. But I certainly didn't know that Canada considers America to be its number one trading partner. It's very
Well, we have the whole free trade policy that goes back and forth. So, yes, there's a lot of trading that goes on between our two countries, especially because we share a land border. It's much less expensive to move things over land than it is through the air or overseas.
very interesting, actually.
Trading partner. In Australia's case, it's China, and in Canada's case, it's the United States.
Okay.
Both countries are making an effort to diversify their economy, and both have been keen for more immigrants to boost the economy.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing, right? Having
Immigration.
a good diversity of people come into your country and create businesses, join different sectors of the job force. Americans are very split on this issue. They don't know quite what to think about people coming into America, whether it's good, whether it's bad.
Yeah.
But I think there's a big argument, and I think Canada is kind of on the same page with this, that it can be a great boost to your economy to have a large pool of people and a diversity of people and schools of thought.
And it can also be a detriment to the economy in that, let's say, for example, welfare programs, we add more people that rely on the welfare programs, which increases the debt to GDP ratio, which has an impact on the entire economy, including inflation and interest rates. Oh, that's been a doozy since this was recorded. Interest rates have gone up, and people have been suffering through their mortgages and so on.
Canada's fertility rate, or should we say the breeding rate, is among the lowest. This rate is below the replacement levels.
What? I know this is actually a worldwide issue right now, that a lot of countries have low fertility, low birth rates, I should say, that it's below the replacement rate, where the population is going to decline in the world, let alone Canada. Yeah, so that's pretty important stuff, actually.
And this is directly correlated to the economy. So as a nation develops, they need smaller families because you don't need the farm hands, okay? So then the population replacement rate begins to drop, especially as we get more into the white-collar jobs, okay? So those families making money, they decide to have fewer children. It creates a wealth bubble, which creates a disparity, and then the lower class also stop having children because they can't afford to have the children, and it kind of crashes the population, and well, that's very complicated, but let's just say that it's very normal for this country and our situation financially and developmentally speaking.
On the other hand, it has a growing aging population. When it comes to the aging population, Canada is no Japan, and not even like Germany or Italy.
Oh, this is all the top countries by aging population. Huh. So United States, is it on here? I don't see it. I feel like the population of most countries in the world seems to be quite weighted towards older people. And that's part of the problem is that we're not people are getting older and not a lot of people are getting born.
And the weight of age is heavily to do with the baby boom that happened after the Second World War. Let's continue.
But with a 17% population over 65 years old, it's not far behind. Further complicating the situation is the combined median age of nearly 42 years. Let's put this all together. A growing number of older people utilizing social and other services without contributing to the economy. A small working age population paying for all this.
Right.
A low birth rate of children that are supposed to grow up to join the workforce. All this makes the country inclined towards more open immigration policies so a bigger working age population could be achieved.
Oh, that's interesting. So, a more open immigration policy can help with the low birth rate problem because, yeah, you get a lot of older individuals who are certainly spending money, buying goods and services, contributing to the economy, but they're probably retired on average, most of them. They're not working. So, it's a lot of purchasing going on, but not like a lot of job replacement. But having people come into your country and maybe become citizens could help, equal that out.
After all,
And it's especially an issue because a lot of young people are not working. A lot of people my age are not working, especially single mothers who happen to be on government assistance. They are not working. So there's a lot of people who are of the age to go and be productive that are on the take instead.
there are only enough taxes that you could put on the high earners under the slogans of tax the rich. And you can't cut back on the social service benefits either, as the existing population is used to them. The population problem is the crux of...
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't skip that. That's a huge thing in America that we have a social security program where you pay into it your whole life and then you get payments when you're older. Monthly payments to live on. And it's getting to the point where people rely on that to retire. But not enough people are getting born in the United States and contributing to it, making payments towards it, the younger people. They're worried that when they grow older, who's going to be paying to those payments so that they can be the ones who are older and getting paid, if that makes sense.
That's a legitimate concern that people of my generation have, yes.
It's a real issue, actually.
of the whole matter. Bringing more immigrants into the country is more of an economic decision than a moral one and has nothing to do with catchwords like diversity, inclusivity, and multiculturalism.
That's very true. If you look at this purely analytically, a lot of Americans treat this as a political issue, but it's really a huge economic issue, isn't it?
The country is managing
Both.
its immigration system for the economic benefits of Canada and not for the immigrants.
Yeah.
The country wants you to contribute to the economy, but it also wants you to breed. Canada has a high
What a way to phrase it. But it also wants you to breed. Citizens, go
true.
out and breed. Now, like, okay, I get the sentiment, but what a way to put it.
foreign-born population that accounts for nearly 8 million people, which is over 21% of its total population. Immigrants work hard. They are usually in their working age. They become part of the tax-paying population. They utilize fewer social services. Many of them could accept jobs that locals are less inclined to carry out, and most of them are also grateful for letting them enter the country due to the lack of opportunities back home and other reasons. And they
Right.
have better fertility rates, relatively, and they also bring foreign money to increase cash flow.
Huh.
Rich immigrants bring
I've honestly never thought about it like this, only because the American media chooses to really frame it through a very politically divided lens. We never even consider it through like an economic viewpoint like this. It's a very interesting viewpoint, though.
Foreign money to the land, although it has a downside that it could be one of the contributing factors of property price surge. Then there are skilled workers.
So about the property portion of this, so there's traditions that come from old countries where multi-generation families live under one household. They pool income. So, for example, 3 brothers, and they all live in the same house with their parents and their grandparents. They go out and get jobs, and they pool their money. Okay, so how much is rent or the mortgage? They all pay a share, which leaves all of them with more spending money. All of this spending money they can put together to purchase a really nice car. Every one of them can take out the car now and then, and it allows them to save more money, which then lets them get another car. For example, they can buy nice things for themselves because the 3 brothers are pooling their money together instead of each of them leaving the home and having to take care of their own mortgage, their own vehicle, their own groceries. And this is something that we Canadians born here with the new country ideas, we are missing out on some great opportunities because of this. We should have stuck with the old country sentiments.
Who bring their skills, obviously. The government does not have a partnership with private companies, so if you don't get the job, then it's your loss. Then there are temporary foreign workers to fill in the jobs that Canadians are less likely to opt in. And last but not least, student immigrants get to study in some of the highest-ranked universities in the world. But for Canadian universities, foreign students are a vital source of income, bringing billions of dollars into the country. Foreign students have to pay much higher tuition fees than the locals.
This is just a whole aspect of an economy that I never even thought about. I mean, Canada, as of the making of this video, was already the 9th biggest economy in the world.
10th now.
But with such a open immigration policy, I suppose that could actually increase.
It's economically viable for Canada to let the import of money pouring in. Education is surely a lucrative business.
Yeah. The love-hate relationship with oil.
Oh, geez, yes. And recently there has been a new tax on the tax that taxes the oil tax.
Does Canada have oil? Is oil a big commodity in Canada? I've never heard this.
Yes. Very
Canada
big.
is an energy superpower with the 3rd highest natural resources valued at $33 trillion US. The country has the 3rd largest proven petroleum reserves, and it's the 4th largest oil exporter in the world, with Alberta and Saskatchewan taking the lead.
Yeah.
The 4th highest oil exporter in the world. This is the kind of thing. This is why I need to watch. This is why I'm here. This is why I need to watch.
Yeah.
This kind of stuff is so important. I just never knew. We just don't. It's not something we discuss in America. You know, we talk about America's issues with oil and getting it and gas prices, but never about like the important players in oil, such as Canada.
Which is why free trade agreements were so very important for American presidents.
But despite sitting on gigantic oil reserves, it also imports oil for domestic consumption due to various reasons. Canada's oil is supposedly extra heavy, and it's more expensive to extract, refine, and transport. The oil economy can grow and shrink based on the global market prices. When the price is high, it's profitable. When the price is down, it's unprofitable for Canada to sell it.
Wow, that explains a bit. I was like, why have I never heard of this? America's obsessed with oil. I was like, what? So Canada has heavy oil. So it needs to be sold at a pretty high price to be worth it to refine it, we'll say. Interesting.
To extract it. We don't do a lot of refining of the oil here in Canada. We mostly extract and consume. The middle steps are done elsewhere because of global economics.
This is true for any business. If your competitor offers the same or better product at a lower price, you are out of business. It makes Canada inclined towards oil imports from the U.S. and Saudi Arabia.
Huh.
Another debatable reason for importing oil is the lack of new pipelines within the country that could increase the availability of domestically produced oil.
Okay.
All of these factors make Canada look for alternative energy sources for future energy demand instead of relying on other countries. It has comparatively little to do with caring for the environment and more to do with economics.
Yeah, unfortunately, which is why the oil industry is not being capped or anything. It's just being taxed and taxed and taxed. So if you want to use gasoline for your automobile, you're going to pay a tax on that tax, and well, go ahead and drink all the gas you want.
So if this makes it sound like oil is a major player in the Canadian economy, but at the same time, Canada doesn't want to be reliant on it because it's not consistent. You're not consistently able to sell it. So maybe it's not that big a player in Canadian economy. But Canada buys a lot of it, but also wants to increase their use of renewable energy, which is
There are a lot of factors, absolutely. You got it right, and there's more, but let's not get into all that.
great, of course. Okay.
Canada is a collection of smaller regional economies. Some regions want to keep the dependence on oil, while others wish the economy to go all green. Some opinions advocate for a gradual and properly phased shift before it is replaced by alternative energy sources that are cost-effective as well as reliable, but no
Sure.
one has a clear answer.
Right.
Another reason to move away
Do the different parts of Canada, the different regions, like really have their own sort of economies? And
Absolutely. Kind of like every state has their own economy. Take New York State, for example. A lot of their money comes from the stock markets. Okay, so here in Canada, a lot of our banking money comes from Ontario because Toronto. All right, it's a similar story. Whereas you've got your prairie nations or your Middle America that does a lot of oil and beef and grain and so on. Then you've got your mountainous regions with a lot of forests, like British Columbia and Washington State. They produce a lot of lumber.
they disagree on stuff like that. I never even thought of Canada like that. But they speak different languages in different parts of Canada, French, English.
So good example there. Louisiana versus California. They have different financial priorities and different ways they want to steer the country as a whole. It's very much the same here in Canada.
So it actually makes sense to me that could be a thing. I mean, America, for the most part, even though we are 50 states, we usually, on issues of the economy, think of it just as the United States as a whole, choosing to do something or the other, not as this state's economy.
I don't know. Look at California and how much they pay for public toilets, and you're going to see there's a big difference in opinion there. Also, how much is Indiana going to care about fisheries as opposed to, say, Nova Scotia, for example?
We don't think of it that way. But Canada could be a little different if there's just a couple of regions that comprise it.
away from oil dependence is the need to diversify the economy. Another reason to move away from oil dependence is the need to diversify the economy. Almost all Canadian oil exports go to the U.S. Staple thesis is a theory that suggests the export of natural resources from Canada to other advanced economies has a pervasive impact on the economy as well as on the social and political systems.
Man, you'd think, as much as America obsesses over getting cheap oil, the news would talk more about Canada being a major exporter of oil to the United States. That's weird to me.
Different staples like
Is it important for America to know that their oil comes from Canada, or is it important that they just get it, right?
oil, minerals, forestry, fishing, etc., impact the rates of settlement as well as federal-provincial conflicts. Some say that the economy could still evolve and diversify, while others suggest it could
Sorry, I have to pause it because it's a Tim Hortons sign on the top. I always have to point out Tim Hortons now that I'm aware of its existence.
permanently get locked into dependency as a resource hinterland. In simpler words, Canada is used by larger countries for staple resources, and it is tied to larger markets, leaving it less likely to explore its own destiny.
Huh.
Canada ranks 36th on the Economic Complexity Index, which means its economy is less diversified among different sectors relative to other countries ranked top on the list.
Okay. I mean, yeah, we haven't really talked about a lot of different commodities that Canada sells. Other than at the beginning where it was kind of joking about maple syrup and the natural resources that it used to sell. So I could see where not having a very diversified set of things to sell to the world, if you want to say it like that, would be a problem because you wanna be diversified. You don't want all your eggs in one basket.
Right.
However, it's still diverse.
And if you don't know why you don't want all your eggs in a basket because your eggs come in cartons, it's because we used to carry them in baskets, and if you drop the basket, you might break all your eggs. And, well, you don't want broken eggs, which is why the egg carton was developed, and now we don't break so many eggs because we don't use so many baskets. The saying persists.
Diversified enough, at least much more than Australia. So
Oh.
it won't be right to call it an oil country, as it has other sectors, including real estate, construction, finance and insurance, logging, automobile, and so on.
Okay, I was like, what are these other sectors? Well, it's got a lot of the sectors that America and other developed nations depend on. Okay.
Yeah.
Digging deep into the Canadian economy. Okay, let's dig deep.
Canada is the world's biggest exporter of maple syrup. It
Yeah, yes.
Naturally.
Oh, I'm glad. I mentioned this earlier, and I was thinking in the back of my mind, wait, maybe it's not so true that maple syrup is like such a huge sector of Canadian export, but lo and behold, the syrup makes it once again. Americans always wonder, like, how important is maple syrup to Canada, actually, because we can't tell if it's like exaggerated or not. But it's true. It's kind of true.
accounts
It's,
for over
it's important.
It's culturally important. It's nutritionally important. It's economically important. Yes, syrup is very important for us.
75% of global production. Biggest
Wait.
exporter of maple syrup. It accounts for over 75% of global production. But contrary to the assumptions, the sweet stuff does not have the biggest impact on the economy. It accounts
Okay.
for around 0.02 to 0.03% of the total GDP.
That's what I would expect. I was gonna say it's maple syrup, though. It's not the most expensive thing in the world. You can't create a ton of it to sustain a country. So it's like less than 1% of the Canadian economy.
But it does have an impact on the economy of specific regions like Quebec, where thousands of jobs rely on the industry.
Okay.
The region also imports seasonal workers from outside to keep the taps running. Canadians could confirm in the comment section if the $100 Canadian bill smells like maple syrup.
So that is something I've heard. I have tested other bills and they do not, but I have not had a $100 bill in my possession since beginning this channel. Time will tell.
Okay.
Canada has the longest coastline in the world. It's among the top contenders that export fish.
That's a fun fact. Largest coastline in the world.
Well, especially when you look at the northern section. Yeah.
Canada. That's a really fun fact, if ever there was one.
Hudson's Bay, right?
Canada has the longest coastline in the world. It's among the top contenders that export fish and fishing products.
Oh.
Lobsters are its top seafood exports.
Oh.
What?
Oh. This is another thing I've never heard of. That Canada is a big seafood exporter.
Yes, very much. The maritime nations are all about it. Like lobster, PEI. It's just we put the two thoughts together in our head.
I mean, doesn't that make sense if you have one of the largest coasts on the planet? Wow. I bet the United States gets a ton of its fish and seafood from Canada.
While every election in the US, few people insist that they would move to Canada if candidate so-and-so wins.
Yes, this is exactly what I said earlier. People in the US are always saying, oh, if he wins the election, I'm moving to Canada. Because Canada is just like the default. Like, if I can't live in the United States, I'll just go to Canada. It's like the United States, but a lot nicer and friendlier. And
Yeah.
people get it there. That's what Americans are always saying.
And, go ahead. Move here. We could use more people, apparently.
Canada's trade and economic prosperity are disproportionately dependent on the United States. Canada takes full advantage of having the biggest consumer market as its neighbor, with over 75% of its total exports reaching the United States.
So that's what it is. I'm not trying to sound egotistical here, but I think the United States, the Canada is not the biggest trade partner with the U.S. The U.S. has lots of trade partners, but for Canada, the U.S. is the biggest trade partner for Canada. 70% of trade, I think they said. That's why I wasn't I was like, how did I miss this? All the trading going on with Canada. It's different proportionally with Canada and the US. Okay.
As the old saying goes, when the US economy catches a cold, the Canadian economy sneezes. This is true in most cases except for the financial sector.
Yeah, the 2008 meltdown, Canada did not get hit nearly as hard as the United States did.
Canada also gets security benefits for having a neighbor like the United States, which has the highest military expenditure in the world.
Yeah. America's not going to let anything happen to Canada. Not only because you're really close by and we're not going to let anything happen near us.
Or for, NATO.
Because we don't want anything to happen to us, but also because, we just love Canada too.
It's nice to have such a large undefended border, yeah.
We're not letting anybody do anything to these parts.
Most of the Canadian population is situated...
But on a serious note, we do spend way too much on military and stuff. It's like absurd. But at least we're safe, I guess. We'll just have like billions of dollars in weapons that we'll never use, but at least we'll feel safe.
So, as of this recording, many of those weapons were being used, just not by Americans, by Ukrainians.
Yes.
roughly hugging the U.S. border. The Canadian population is situated roughly military expenditure in the world. Most of the Canadian population is situated roughly hugging the U.S. border.
Yeah.
That's another thing I didn't know. Gosh, I'm stopping this video every 2 seconds because it's just thing after thing that I'm like, how did I not know that most of Canada's population is by the border?
Well, it has a lot to do with the geographical location of being more south than it is north, because as we all know, more south means less cold.
Between Canada and I figured, Canada is a pretty big landmass north of the United States, that the population's like equally dispersed throughout it, kind of like the United States. The population's dispersed throughout the whole country. Apparently not in Canada. Apparently most of the population is by the border.
And in America, if I'm not mistaken, the majority of the population are on coastal cities.
Which is crazy. Not crazy as in bad. Crazy as in amazingly fascinating to me. So, and like I just learned the other day how close Ottawa and other cities are to the border. I never knew. Never knew.
Canada is smart when it comes to the minimum wage. The country has no single minimum wage for the entire country. Instead, the provinces and territories set and impose their own separate minimum wage rates.
Oh.
Canada has...
Well, that's kind of similar in America. The states pretty much control minimum wage on a state level. But there's also a national minimum wage. It's weird. It's weird how it works out. Yeah. You can have state laws and national laws, and they can conflict, and it's something.
It's one of the highest household disposable income, which is a... Canada has one of the highest household disposable income, which is a measure of money a household is left to spend or save after income taxes have been deducted. Okay. While disposable income is shown off as a shiny number, not many people talk about discretionary income, which is the amount of income left after all necessities are covered.
Oh.
Disposable income does not calculate wealth, as it does not take into account the cost of living and average expenditures. This is how most of the advanced economies are generating working poor with the illusion of wealth. On the other hand, discretionary income data is poorly reported by most countries.
Yeah, that's all that matters, right? As far as your life fulfillment and entertainment day to day, like how much you're actually enjoying your life is if you can get those, how much money do you have after the necessities of shelter, food, clothing? Then that's the point where you're like, okay, what money do I have now left over
Yeah.
to do stuff and buy stuff that I actually will help me enjoy life? That's so important.
Canada is no Switzerland or Norway when it comes to the cost of living, but it's still in the top 25 list. Consumer goods are expensive, although it mostly depends on where you are living within the country. Canada is also among the countries with the most expensive childcare when calculated by the percentage of the couple's average earnings.
Okay. I mean,
So that's as a ratio, right?
I do expect Canada to be very, very, very high up in a lot of these world rankings as far as economy and develop. It's a developed nation, on the forefront of technology and development, right up there with the best of them. So I do expect Canada to
Thank
be
you.
high on lots of economic measurements.
I was just thinking, like, high on marijuana. Yeah, kind of.
If you will.
Canada has one of the highest household debts compared to income levels. These are mainly taken for mortgages, and it fuels the housing market.
And this has actually got worse since this was recorded. Yeah.
Canadian household debt as a percentage of disposable income has risen above 170%. Housing
Wow.
in some areas is an obvious bubble, with Vancouver and Toronto taking the lead.
Wow. Housing in America was, this video I think wasn't made in when, 2021? It's like a year old. So things have changed a little bit, actually. Well, in America, the housing bubble is kind of collapsing right now, where were so ridiculously expensive no one could buy any. No new families could buy houses, and now it's starting to pop, and prices are going down. And
9 months ago, we did think that's what was happening. But that is not what has happened after all.
all sorts of madness that goes along with that.
Growing the manufacturing sector in Canada is somewhat impractical. High wages do not allow it to compete against the countries that have a low-wage workforce. Cheap imports beat out any hopes for a large-scale manufacturing base.
That's a really interesting point.
And a big issue with a lot of, I'm just going to say, Chinese companies that are taking advantage of that. Their status as a developing nation means that they don't have to pay a lot of fees, which is why terrible apps like Temu, Shein, and Wish can sell you dirt cheap garbage with no shipping fee, and it costs less than anything you can get locally. Well, it's because it's garbage.
Yeah, when you want to pay your employees well, you want to pay your citizens well. Well, that means you can't, by definition, you don't have cheap labor. So you can't outcompete some of the big manufacturing powers of the world.
Yeah.
So it's great Canada tries to pay people well, but then you can't outcompete certain industries. It's very interesting.
This is making the existing manufacturing industry slowly die out or be dependent on government subsidies. Canada has an awesome single-payer health system. Although
Yeah.
it's falsely advertised as a free healthcare system and should rather be called a publicly funded healthcare.
Right. Americans are always pointing to Canada as like, hey, we need healthcare
Free.
like them. Now, the truth is, American healthcare sucks, not because the healthcare sucks, but because you'll fall into massive debt if you don't have the right insurance, or if you get too injured and need special treatments, you will fall into debt forever. That's the scary truth of American healthcare. So, in that sense, I think Canada is definitely beating us.
Healthcare spending represents nearly
Yeah.
12% of the country's GDP. While some Americans are quick to point out flaws in Canadian healthcare, and you can discuss the comparisons between the US and Canadian healthcare in the comments section below, nonetheless, Canada's healthcare system works great for most of the population.
Yeah.
Well, the problem with America's healthcare system is they treat it like a business, where they want you to, their priority is not your health, it's to get you to pay crazy amounts of money. Yeah, so anything's better than that, I think.
Well, that's debatable. Do you have money? In that case, no. Are you poor? In which case, yes, having government funded healthcare is great. Are you a doctor? In which case, no, government funded is not great because you're not getting paid as much as you could be in other economic circumstances. Well, one thing that we know as humans is you can't make everybody happy. You just gotta try and do your best.
Agriculture is not Canada's plus point and accounts for 1.6% of the total economy. You
Okay.
can partly blame the country's harsh climate.
Oh, I was gonna say, why is this? I don't think of America as a huge agricultural cornerstone of the world, but there are a lot of farms, a lot of
Yeah.
farmland. The climate is pretty conducive to farming in America. So it actually is a huge part of our economy. But not so much in Canada because of the aptitude for like coldness and fluctuations, big changes in climate throughout
Yes, it makes it so that we only have 1/4 of the year to grow things, which is a lot smaller window than other parts of the world.
the year. That makes sense.
There is an abundance of imported food available at a much cheaper price relative to domestically produced food products. However, the government does offer protection to some agricultural sectors like dairy and poultry against the competition induced by the low price imports and to keep some food self-sufficiency. Although
Okay.
this results in higher consumer costs for some products.
Okay, okay.
Canada is not the best when it comes to traditional food and cuisine. Poutine
I guess this just... Oh, poutine! Of course I accidentally paused it on the poutine. Still have never had that, by the way. I was just going to say, I guess it's up to each nation to kind of decide how much they want their government to intervene and kind of support different businesses and industries, such as like the dairy industry in Canada. You want those people in that industry to be able to make a living and survive and make Canadian milk and dairy products. But like economically, it doesn't add up. So the government has to help, and I think every country kind of comes to their own conclusion on how much help they should give into what.
is an exception. Kraft dinner is also very popular.
What?
Traditional food and cuisine. Poutine is an
Hold on.
Canada is not the best when it comes to traditional food and cuisine.
Oh.
Poutine is an exception. Kraft dinner is also very popular. Canada
Oh.
has the largest number of donut shops per capita.
Oh, wait, mac and cheese, donuts? Oh man, this is getting me. This would get any American a little excited. Sorry.
They also consume the most donuts per capita in the world.
Wait, Canada does?
Because of Tim Hortons primarily, yes.
I'm shocked that that's not America. Americans love donuts. I'm a little embarrassed.
Okay, but as an American, how often do you go to a donut store, right? Whereas in Canada, people go to the donut shop daily because it's Tim Hortons. They can get a coffee, they can get a tea, they can get a special drink. It's like the Starbucks, right? Only lower price and less fancy options. And while you're in the drive-through getting your double-double, you might as well get a 10 of Timmy's or 10 of Timbits, right? Or like a 12 of donuts. Absolutely. So yeah, a lot of donuts.
So that you took that title from us, man.
Donut shops per capita. They also consume the most donuts per capita in the world. Tim
Wow.
Hortons is surely a contributing factor. Canada
Okay.
is the second biggest country in the world by area. From Niagara Falls
Right.
to the Canadian Rockies and having the highest number of lakes in the world, tourism accounts for 1% of the economy.
Huh.
It is something that could be expanded to its full potential in the future.
Right, right. I think the tourism to Canada should be much higher. I think there's a information problem with Americans. They don't. Most Americans don't know how beautiful it is there and how beautiful and amazing the cities are in Canada. They're just not aware. So there could definitely be more tourism if the information, if people in America and other parts of the world were more informed on the amazing stuff in Canada.
Right, amazing stuff. So it's the attractions, okay? So let's look at Florida, where you've got the Disney World, okay? California, where you've got not only Hollywood, but you've also got Disneyland, right? Universal Studios. These are things that pull people in. Whereas you want to go to Banff and you've got the nature. You've got the nature. There's no other big attraction, no other magnet to draw in the people.
With its early colonial history, Canada has two official languages, French and English. Bilingualism throughout Canada results in the duplication of government services like bilingual signage, forms, advertisements, and so on, using the public purse.
I've never even thought about that kind of details because America is just monolingual.
Yeah, everything has to be done twice at least, and then it has to be reviewed and edited.
One language. We speak American. No, we speak English.
American.
But I do think man, I wish I spoke another language. That's so cool. I'm jealous. But apparently it causes some duplication of efforts in Canada, which, that makes sense. Never had to think about that.
A 2012 study revealed that bilingualism costs about $2.4 billion.
Right.
Higher education in the country is not a lifetime mortgage that students take decades to repay like in the U.S.
Yeah.
Canada has a well-educated population. The country ranks one of the highest on the Tertiary Education Attainment Index.
Wow, that's fantastic. And yes, of course they had to take a jab at America. We deserve it. You'll go into massive debt forever just by trying to get a higher education. So Canada is definitely winning there.
Although what is referred to as white-collar jobs are short in supply. Canada needs more companies like Shopify, but it has a talent drain problem where tons of graduating from universities can go abroad to the south to enjoy better earnings, a higher consumer base, and a warmer climate.
Oh.
The warmth. That's really what draws people, is the warmth.
Yeah, that is a drawback. There's advantages to being right bordering America, the United States, I should say. But then also a lot of Canadians, if they want different opportunities, they can travel into the United States and work there if they want to be a part of Silicon Valley or other sorts of places that they think are advantageous or have opportunities. Wow. I never thought of that. America is taking a bunch of the amazing Canadian talent. Sorry about that, but also I'm very happy to have them.
Forget about natural resources. Any country's biggest asset is its people. Canada needs to invest in its people, not by showering more social benefits over them, but by promoting a culture of entrepreneurial mindsets and innovation. It has to facilitate its population away from a risk-averse mentality so they could make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen to them.
I think America does a really good job at that. Really promotes the entrepreneurial attitude. That's very highly praised in America.
Other than that, life is great in Canada. Well, we are off to Timmy's to get some Timbits and a double-double. We hope you have enjoyed the video.
Okay. I did enjoy that. Wow. That was by Economic Raven. I liked that. Wow. That was so interesting. Yeah. That wasn't exactly what I thought it would be, but it did cover a lot of the questions I had about what kind of imports and exports Canada was working with and had historically, and what the people focus on as far as jobs and education. And there's just so much that goes into what creates a nation's economy that this feels like, although it was kind of a snapshot look at it, it was a very good general overview of me kind of understanding the position of the Canadian economy in the world.
And I hope that it gave you a little bit of extra information as well, because not only did they bring up things that we don't think about every day, but he asked questions. I gave some context.
Very highly positioned, and I never really appreciated the relationship Canada had with the United States as far as trade and even the workforce goes. I just never thought about that.
Well, there's a lot of American products that make their way up north here, yeah.
Because I just think of America as being sort of a global trade platform, interacting with so many people, especially with the internet and all that and online commerce. But obviously, it makes sense that since Canada and the United States are physically next to each other, there's a very important relationship there, more so than I even realized. So I'm glad I watched this. That was very informative. Anyway, if you are glad that you watched this,
If you're glad about this,
feel free
give it
to
that like.
leave a comment or give it a like.
Comment.
And if you're interested in more videos like this,
Like
me
this.
reacting to Canada,
Me reacting to
Canadian
him,
culture,
reacting to
stuff I've
us.
never seen before about Canada, feel free to
News.
subscribe for
Yeah,
more.
do
and
that.
Until then, thanks for watching, and see you next time.
Yes, thank you very much for watching. I enjoyed this. I hope you enjoyed this. And if you did, great. That's what I'm doing this for. I'm not doing this for me, but I am doing this for me. I'm doing this for us. It's a community thing. Like, it's not just a hobby. It's also a spiritual exercise, because I think that we all matter a lot. I think this smiley face right here, he matters. I think his questions matter. I think my answers matter. And I think your thoughts matter as well. So go ahead, leave those comments, leave those likes, do those subscriptions, ring a bell. I don't know what else to say except you just keep being awesome. Bye.
Science, spirit, life, nerd.